For today's video, viewers Bruce and Alfred the Cat very kindly sent over one of the legendary Dustbin Mac Pros, which, considering that I was real impressed by one of its inbred offspring, I am super excited to check out. But first, today's video is sponsored by Deepcool's new Mystique AIO cooler. This 360mm beast with its pre-installed fans is perfect for cooling even the most demanding CPUs. And with its new digital display right on the pump, you can always be reminded of the power of Mystique. And if temperatures aren't your thing, you can customize the display to show whatever your little heart desires. So go and check out the Deepcool Mystique AIO using the link in the video description. Oh, no way, it comes with a towel? That is actually a really good way to ship stuff, because once you're done using it as packaging, you can dry your body with it. Oh cool, they still had the original packaging. I too am a box hoarder. Ah yes, the legendary Dustbin Pro. Not many people remember this, but Apple used to wrap all their products in torn up bits of t-shirt. Oh, whoa, that's pretty cool looking. It's got a bit of an alien artifact vibe to it. I can imagine 1,000 years after the great Musk-Zuckerberg war and civilization, some archaeologist is gonna dig one of these out of the ruins of MKBHD's office, and they're all gonna start praying to it because they think it's a mystical artifact. But then it also somehow looks a bit like a dustbin. Now, the artifact that Alfred the Cat very kindly sent over is a 2013 Mac Pro, which interestingly, aside from Apple eventually discontinuing the entry-level quad-core variant, Apple kept selling the Mac Pro essentially unchanged until it was replaced in 2019, which means theoretically you could have spent $7,000 on a Mac Pro in 2019 based on hardware from 2013. They didn't even update the generation of Xeon in it. Anyway, I'm not sure what spec Alfred specifically sent over, but we'll find that out once we fire it up. It kind of feels like it's metal and looks like it's metal, but it doesn't really sound like metal. In terms of ventilation, as far as I understand it, there's a fan in the top that pulls air through the bottom of the case with help of convection, which according to Apple is very effective, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. That is an absurd amount of Thunderbolt ports. It just shows Apple's happy to give you I/O if you're an oligarch. It's a shame that all the I/O's on the back, so you can't just pop a USB stick into it, but I guess that would ruin the Event Horizon aesthetic, so there's that. There's also this little lock thing, which I think is to pull the cover off, maybe? Other than that, physically, not a whole lot to say about it until we open it up. But before I break it, let's turn it on. In standard Apple fashion, it's essentially impossible to interact with it without visibly soiling it. I don't know how to power it on. Do you just kind of like... No. Oh, you need to do the old reach around, I see. Okay. Oh! Wasn't expecting it to have a speaker in it. Don't know why it's necessary for it to shout at me. That's very gaming laptop of it. Oh, an emperor penguin. Nice choice, Bruce. Good animal. Cannot be identified and will not be usable until it's identified. So we know Apple's stance on immigration from that little pop-up there. Let's see. So you go up here and you click on About This Mac. See, I know Apple things. So this is a 6-core variant with 32 gigs of RAM and a FirePro D500. Ooh, I'm excited to do some gaming on this system. Now, the thing that's nice about this hardware configuration is that we can likely install Windows on here without much effort. But I am gonna try and game on macOS Monterey, which, is that like a new one? It isn't. Damn, Apple yoinks support for their systems fast. Whoa. Cause it's Pro, we gotta try some Cinebench on it, which luckily I didn't have to pay for in the Apple Store. Very good. And it's off. Look at the power. Not only is it tearing through R20, but unsarcastically, it's remarkably quiet. There's just this very quiet, like, that it's doing. Its mild manners may have been impressive, but its result really wasn't. Oof, the poor old Mac Pro gets dumpstered by a 7700K. Oh no. And that's with it running the multi-threaded test, but don't worry, the single-threaded test was just as tragic. And I think because of the older operating system, the gaming section of the Apple Store is somehow even more depressing than I remember it to be. Oh, that's a fun little problem I forgot about. Considering my game drive is formatted in NTFS, and Apple, like with everything else, is a huge pain in the ass about file systems, my game drive's not going to work on it. Although, never mind, it's still found the games. That's interesting. Next, a process like digging for astatine, finding a Steam game that'll actually run on macOS. Oh, and don't worry, those stop signs aren't nearly as useful as they look. Most of the other games also don't work. Oh, see, that's the problem that we're gonna run into here, is despite the fact that Steam can find the game on the drive, it can't write anything on the drive, so we can't play the games. Wow, this has been a real roller coaster of emotions, my word. So Dota should work once I physically download it onto the system. 1 frame per second. It is not starting off strong. Okay, no, things have loaded in. Okay, so now that things have kind of loaded in at 1080p low settings, the game is borderline playable. Although, I wouldn't want to play it like this. It is very stuttery and it looks like garbage. Interestingly, it's running pretty much as well as Dota was running on an M2 based MacBook, which to me is really funny. I mean, I can like last hit and stuff, but this is not usable for online game. I was able to dumpster the bot lobby, but that's just because of my mad gaming skills, and the bots really suck. I then tried the only compelling game I could find in the Apple Play Store. So even late game Civilization runs pretty well on it. I don't have a frame rate counter or whatever, but it's a perfectly playable experience. Which isn't surprising considering that the game is as old as I am, basically. So with that, let's install a blasphemous operating system on this bad boy and see what it can do with that. So apparently installing Windows on this is pretty straightforward. You just go to Finder up here and then you search Boot Camp Assistant, which is installed on here. Continue, and then we can kind of choose the size of our partition. So the ISO needs to download, and then we can make the partition and installation happens. Like it's very straightforward, and we maintain our macOS install on here as well. If this just works like this, it's wild that I could install Windows on this without violence happening. It's pretty cool. This was the first time I've ever experienced people saying an Apple thing is easy to do wasn't just a straight up lie. Once the bootcamp install finished, the system restarted, Windows installed, and we were done. Oh, no way. It's got 2 D500s in Crossfire in it. Cool. Now we have a little bit of an issue in terms of frame rate with our Mac Pro. I can't get it to output more than 60 frames per second at 1440p. And I think it has to do with limitations on the HDMI port on the back. So let's try and use the Thunderbolt port and see if that helps. Now we can set it. Ah, there we go. Okay, so the HDMI is an issue. Now everything feels better. And with our Windows install, theoretically came much better game support. It's not happy with the overlay. It doesn't want us prying into what it's doing, because not only is it flickering, but there's like weird stat readout happening. But after relaunching the game a couple times, the overlay just fixed itself. It's just fine now. Although we still have no idea what the GPUs are doing. Look at that! We're getting 120 frames per second at 1080p low settings. But it's running a lot better than I was expecting it to run. I was pretty convinced this was going to be an unplayable dumpster fire at 1080p, but it isn't. What I am curious to see is how much performance we lose if we turn off the one GPU. Now I'm gonna be brave and see if I can do that with the game running, which probably isn't gonna go great, but let's see. Oh, it just crashed. We're getting about 80 frames per second with just the single GPU running. So it's about 40 down, which gives us, what, like a 50% performance increase with the second GPU, which is not gonna happen in newer games at all. because there hasn't been new drivers for this GPU in a very long time, and Crossfire is very driver dependent, right? So yeah, I think this is probably best case scenario we're looking at here. Then when I tried to benchmark the difference between the configurations, the system started really acting up. So on the bright side, we do have proper usage information now, but we have descended into the upside down, so there is that. This is with both GPUs running, and it's running very hot. So despite it being really quiet and with very little load on it, the temperatures they're quite high. So the only benchmark information I could extract from the system was amidst all the weirdness, but it did show a bit of an improvement between the GPU configurations. I don't know if the benchmarks... Oh. It just crashed. Okay. For some reason, the overlay refused to work with CS2, but subjectively, the game felt fine at 1080p low settings, and then every other game I normally play just refused to work on the Mac Pro, presumably because of the 900-year-old drivers. Luckily, Dota worked, so we could directly compare the gaming performance between Mac OS and Windows 10. Okay, so for some reason with Dota, when it's full screen at 1080p, I'm not allowed a mouse. Maybe borderless window gives me a mouse cursor? It does, but then it's not full screen. Going back to full screen just deleted the cursor again. That's so weird, why? But after switching between the two modes enough times, I eventually got both full screen and a mouse cursor. Oh, now it's worked. Yo, this system has a weirdly syphilitic way of running Windows. Like, it is not like it very much. Things keep crashing, a bunch of stuff doesn't work, like, just weird things happening the whole time. Well, it is already running about twice as well as it was running on macOS, if not more than twice as well. Now with both GPUs running, which they are despite the weird readout, we're getting a much less stuttery experience than we did with macOS, but let's try just one GPU. I've been having a whole bunch of stability issues. I kinda wonder if Boot Camp doesn't deliberately install a really buggy version of Windows so that it like baits Apple people into thinking Windows is terrible. Because that would kinda make sense for them to do, like, I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, you wanna use Windows? Here, look at how terrible this diseased version of it is that we're giving you. And with my second stability rant out of the way, Dota didn't perform any differently with one GPU as opposed to two enabled. And with that, we get to the most exciting part of the video, tearing down Alfred the Cat's Mac Pro. So I think how it works is we flip that. Oh! Yeah, this is metal. And without its metal foreskin, the Dustbin Mac looks a bit like a nuclear weapon to me. Straight off the bat, it looks pretty upgradable for an Apple product. There are 4 RAM slots that you can easily upgrade. You just push that little button, and then when the RAM pops out, you just pull the stick out. And then on this board, there's an M.2 slot for our storage. Although it does seem like there's just one of these slots, which is kind of shocking for a professional device of this price. And then other than that, I think to get deeper into the system, we undo these hex screws, and then we might be able to get just right into the guts of the thing. We just pull that up. Cool. Then we have a ribbon cable that we need to deal with. Very awkward angle. Oh yeah, okay, that looks like that. That is a very heavy duty cable to just power a fan, although it is quite a wild looking fan. And then I also want to pop up the antenna. There we go. Wow, that is a monster of a blower fan, which was, if anything, too quiet as we saw from the temperatures, which apparently leads to quite a lot of GPU failures in these. I think Apple was too conservative with the fan profiles on this. Whoa, that's a cool looking triangular heatsink in here, Illuminati confirmed. Although it's not very dense at all, there's very little fin structure in here. And then next to that pyramid shape is the power supply. So this is a very similar layout to that MSI case. It's almost like MSI copied this design, but you know, that's definitely not what happened. So I think what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to just undo all of the screws and lift the whole motherboard assembly out in one go. Is that a stupid idea? I don't know, let's give it a try. Oh, it's moving. but being too scared to tug any harder, I decided to remove the GPUs first and see what that does. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's cool. I hope that Alfred the cat is not offended by what Alfred sees happening here. Oh, that's a cool connector as well. Okay, so you pull that out. This clean-looking PCB is our D500, which is theoretically upgradable to a D700, but in typical Apple fashion, they very tightly controlled the supply, so good luck finding a replacement PCB. Also, as we mentioned before, due to the high temperatures, apparently these have quite a high failure rate. I love how Apple cheaps out on the thermal pad. It doesn't make full contact with the memory modules. You can see here it doesn't cover the whole copper bit. And then down here is the ribbon connector they use to connect the graphics card to the rest of the system. Bit number 2. Oh, that's actually a SATA SSD. Oof. It makes sense considering the age, but compared to modern drives, this thing's a real loser. Wait, but we still haven't really answered the age-old question of how do we go deeper. But all I had to do was pull up. Oh, the whole thing lifts out of the base. And then there's a couple of screws on the base we have to undo here. Just lift, okay. There we go. So this is the little daughter board thing that the rest of the components of the system connect through. And then we have this PCIe looking slot where the central motherboard kind of slots in. And then that is like a Southbridge-esque chip over there. Now to get to the main motherboard, you have to kind of bend the power supply up off it and then hold it at an angle that makes it feel like you're holding open a chest cavity while you unscrew the mounting for the CPU. Oh, wow, that sucked. And there is our big-ass Xeon, which is socketed with a whole bunch of power delivery for it. And then the RAM modules are on the other side of that. Interesting. And to remove the CPU, you just need to undo the bracket on the back. You should just be able to pop that off. And then here is our socketed Xeon CPU. And with that teardown, we've learned that Apple had a product that was theoretically very modular and upgradable, but then they just ignored it for 6 years and then replaced it with something completely different. Very nice. This was almost cool, Apple, if only someone else made it. And until the next video, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.